The day my husband died was a day I'll never forget. Even now, I can feel the weight of that morning pressing down on my chest, suffocating me with disbelief. He had gone out early, as he always did, to check on a client for his construction business. I remember waiting for him by the window, coffee in hand, feeling a strange sense of calm. And then the call came, the one that would shatter everything I believed about life, love, and family. Mrs. Harper, the trembling voice on the other end, said, "This is Detective Lawson. There's been an accident." My knees gave way, and the cup slipped from my hands, shattering on the floor. I couldn't breathe, couldn't speak, and just like that, my world fell apart. He had been my anchor, my confidant, the man I trusted with every secret, every dream. Together, we had built a life that most would envy, our cozy two-story house with the sunlit garden, the late night walks under the stars, the endless conversations about the future. We had planned everything: vacations, a second home by the lake, maybe a child someday. But in a single phone call, all those dreams evaporated. The funeral was a blur. People came and went, murmuring condolences that barely reached me. Some cried, some whispered, some stared at me with pitying eyes. And then she arrived, my sister, the woman I had once trusted above all else. She looked immaculate, of course, perfectly composed, but there was something in her smile that I couldn't place. Something sharp. After the service, while everyone else seemed lost in their grief, she pulled me aside. I thought it would be a quiet, supportive gesture. Maybe she wanted to comfort me. Instead, she leaned in, eyes glinting with a secret only she knew, and said, "My son, he's his, and I'm inheriting half the house." I froze. The words didn't register at first. My mind spun in a cyclone of disbelief. What did she just say? My husband was gone, and she, my sister, was claiming he had a child with her. And half of the house, I don't understand, I whispered, my voice cracking. She smirked, almost triumphantly, like a predator who had just cornered its prey. "It's all perfectly legal. Everyone will see it that way, and you'll have to accept it. The betrayal cut deeper than grief ever could." My sister, my flesh and blood, had chosen this moment, my darkest hour, to unveil a lie that could destroy everything my husband and I had built. I wanted to scream, to hit her, to demand an explanation, but the crowd of mourners still lingering around us forced me to swallow my rage. I nodded, my face a mask of fragile composure, while inside I was burning. That night I sat alone in our bedroom, the one he had designed for me with soft, lavender walls and windows that caught the morning light. I traced the outlines of our photographs, the smiles frozen in happier times, and felt a wave of anger rise alongside my grief. How could my sister do this, betray me in such a cold, calculated way? And yet, as furious as I was, I also felt a flicker of determination. I wouldn't crumble under her schemes. I wouldn't let her rewrite my husband's story, our story, for her gain. If she thought she could destroy me while I mourned, she was sorely mistaken. I began to make mental notes, subtle but relentless. I would need proof, evidence that her claims were nothing but smoke and mirrors. I would need patience that my anger was barely letting me summon. But most of all, I knew one thing with absolute certainty. My husband deserved justice, my family deserved the truth, and my sister, she was about to discover that betrayal has consequences. That night, I cried for him. I cried for the life we had shared. And beneath those tears, a fire began to burn. A fire that would not be extinguished until she paid for what she had done. The days after the funeral felt like I was walking through a fog. Every step I took in that house, every sound of the creaking floorboards, reminded me that he was gone. And now my sister's words echoed in my ears like a poison I couldn't flush out. My son is his, and I am inheriting half the house. At first, I thought maybe it was a cruel joke. But the way she looked at me, so calm and assured, made it clear she meant every word. She had already started telling our relatives, sprinkling her story in small whispers during visits, making sure everyone heard only what she wanted them to hear. People I had trusted, who had been friends of both of us, started avoiding me, offering hesitant glances instead of comfort. I knew I couldn't confront her yet, not publicly. She thrived on attention, on drama, and if I reacted, it would only give her more ammunition. Instead, I began to watch her, carefully noting every conversation, every subtle slip. My grief had sharpened my senses, and what I saw terrified me. She wasn't just lying. She was weaving a story so intricate that, if I didn't act fast, it could destroy me. She had already started planting seeds of doubt about me. Our relatives whispered about my supposed inattentiveness, my distracted grief, my inability to handle the estate. They didn't see the late nights I spent going over bills, organizing paperwork, trying to honor him in every way I could. All they saw was what my sister wanted them to see: a grieving widow too fragile, too lost to fight back. One afternoon, I found her in the study rifling through his desk drawers. She jumped, smiling sweetly, pretending she was just looking for memories. But I saw the real intent. She wanted evidence to support her lies, to make her story believable. That's when the cold rage took root. She had underestimated me. She had forgotten that I knew every corner of this house, every secret my husband had confided in me, every move she had ever tried to make. Determined, I started gathering my own proof. Old emails, messages, financial documents, anything that could dismantle her claims. My husband had been meticulous, and I had always kept copies of everything, thinking it was just practical. Now, it was my weapon. I discovered letters she had sent him years ago, letters he had politely answered but never acted on. Nothing in them suggested anything beyond friendship and family. Her son was a fabrication, but I knew exposing her wouldn't be simple. People love a good scandal, yes, but they also love appearances. She had cultivated the perfect image, composed grieving in just the right way, tears always at the right moment. People believed her because she had rehearsed it, and yet I noticed cracks, tiny, almost invisible cracks in her story. The timing of events didn't match. Her memories were inconsistent. Her expressions sometimes flickered with something I could only describe as guilt or fear. I started planning my moves carefully. Revenge wouldn't come from shouting or confrontation. It would come from strategy, patience, and precision. I would let her weave her lies, let her believe she was winning, and then I would strike in a way she couldn't anticipate. The nights were the hardest. Alone in the bedroom we had shared, I allowed myself to cry not just for him, but for the betrayal that had pierced through my family. Yet beneath the tears, that fire I had felt after the funeral burned brighter. I pictured her smug face when she realized that all her manipulations, all her schemes, had been anticipated. The thought made the grief slightly more bearable. By the end of the week, I had a plan forming in my mind, a web as intricate as hers, but stronger, built on truth. And in that plan, I would not just reclaim what was mine. I would make sure she understood, in the deepest part of her heart, that betrayal has a price. I had lost my husband, yes, but I would not lose myself. And soon, the sister who had tried to take everything from me would learn that some flames, once ignited, are impossible to extinguish. By the time the third week after the funeral rolled around, I had become almost unrecognizable to everyone, calm, composed, and quietly calculating. Grief still haunted me, of course, but it had transformed into something sharper, something dangerous. I had spent sleepless nights going over documents, timelines, and conversations, piecing together every lie my sister had woven. And now I was ready. The first step was subtle. I began dropping small truths in casual conversation, planting seeds of doubt about her story. A relative would mention her claim, and I would smile just a touch knowingly and say, Oh, I remember something my husband wrote. He kept meticulous records. Maybe we should check them. It seemed innocent, but I could see the hesitation creeping into people's eyes. Next, I used her own hubris against her. My sister had become careless, confident that her lies were airtight. She bragged to our relatives about her inheritance, and even mentioned that I seemed too fragile to contest anything. She didn't notice the little cameras I had set up in the study, just enough to catch her snooping, and snoop she did. Within days, I had proof, her rifling through my husband's private papers, whispering into her phone about concocting a story. I saved the piece de resistance for the right moment, a family meeting regarding the house and estate. Everyone would be there, the relatives, the lawyers, the family friends who had believed her story. She arrived looking as composed as ever, expecting applause for her cunning. Instead, she found herself facing me, calm and collected, a folder of documents in my hands. Before we begin, I said, my voice steady but carrying an unmistakable edge, I believe it's time we all reviewed the facts. I've gone through everything carefully, letters, emails, even financial records. I could see her smile falter, the first real crack in her armor. I laid out everything, the correspondence proving she had manipulated situations to look favorable, the evidence that her son had no connection to my husband, and the proof that she had been actively scheming to claim half the house. I watched her face turn pale, the confident smirk replaced by a tight, trembling grimace. "What is this?" she stammered, trying to regain control. "These are private things. How did you?" I held up the recordings from the study. "You were careful, yes, too careful maybe, but mistakes are always made, and lies, they have a way of catching up." The room fell silent. Whispers of shock and disbelief rippled through the crowd. My sister tried to argue, tried to charm, tried to shift blame, but every attempt only dug the hole deeper. I could see her panic rising. She had counted on everyone believing her, and now the truth was undeniable. After what felt like hours but was probably minutes, the lawyers confirmed what I already knew. She had no claim. Nothing, half the house, her supposed inheritance gone, because the facts were on my side. The smug sense of justice made my chest ache, not with pride, but with the relief of finally setting things right. Yet the sweetest part wasn't just the legal victory. It was the look on her face, the slow realization that she had underestimated me, that every manipulation she had perfected over years had failed spectacularly. She would carry that humiliation with her forever. That night, alone in my bedroom, I allowed myself a small smile. Revenge had been sweet, yes, but it had also been precise, dignified, and controlled. No shouting, no destruction, just the undeniable truth and the knowledge that justice, even delayed, had been served. As I stared at the photographs of my husband around the room, I whispered, "We did it. I kept your memory safe, and I stopped her from tarnishing everything we built." The grief hadn't disappeared, but it had shifted, transformed into strength, into clarity. I was no longer just a widow. I was a woman who had faced betrayal, who had been pushed to the edge and had come back not broken, but unshakably resilient. And for the first time since his death, I felt a flicker of peace. The morning after the family meeting, the house felt different. It wasn't just the sunlight spilling into every corner, or the way the garden seemed brighter after weeks of gray skies. It was me. I walked through the rooms we had built together, touching the walls he had painted, the furniture we had chosen, and felt an unexpected lightness. The weight of grief had not disappeared. It never would, but it had shifted into something I could carry without being crushed. The house, which had once felt like a prison of memories and lies, now felt like a sanctuary. Every corner told a story, yes, but it was my story, ours, untainted by deceit. I began making small changes, repainting the kitchen, adding new flowers to the garden, rearranging photographs so the house reflected life, not death. Each small act was a reclaiming, a statement that I was still here, still capable of building a future despite everything. My sister had retreated into silence. The public humiliation had left her cautious and withdrawn. Relatives who once praised her cunning now avoided her, whispers of her deception spreading through the community. She had learned painfully that betrayal has consequences, and watching her retreat without a word of apology brought me a strange sense of calm satisfaction. Justice had been served quietly, precisely, and with dignity. Friends and extended family who had doubted me slowly returned, some with apologies, others with cautious curiosity. I found myself reconnecting with people I had nearly lost, discovering who truly mattered. There were no grand declarations, no confrontations, just gentle reminders that life continues, even after heartbreak. And I welcomed them cautiously, with the knowledge that I was stronger than I had ever imagined. One evening, I sat on the back porch, wrapped in a soft blanket, watching the sun dip behind the trees. The house, my husband's laughter, our shared dreams, all of it felt sacred, untouched by my sister's lies. I realized that revenge had been only a part of the journey. The real triumph was reclaiming myself, discovering that I could survive grief, betrayal, and deceit, and still emerge whole. I began writing letters to my husband, not for anyone else, but for me. I poured out the sorrow, the anger, the longing, and the small victories, speaking to him in words that had gone unsaid for weeks. The act of writing became a ritual of healing, each word a bridge between the past and the future. I felt him with me, smiling quietly at my strength, proud that I had honored him without losing myself. Life slowly returned to its rhythms. I started volunteering at a local charity, helping widows and families in crisis. The work reminded me that grief is universal, but resilience can be shared. Helping others didn't erase the pain, but it gave it meaning. It allowed me to transform my loss into something beautiful, something that rippled beyond my own life. Even the house, once a symbol of betrayal, became a testament to survival. I decided not to sell it immediately. Instead, I renovated it, creating spaces filled with warmth, light, and memories I could cherish without fear. Every room reflected a choice: to honor the past without letting it imprison me, to hold on to love without letting lies dictate my future. And finally, I allowed myself to imagine life beyond sorrow. I thought about possibilities I had once dreamed of: travel, new experiences, perhaps even love again someday. The thought was tentative, like a fragile bud in early spring, but it brought hope. I realized that grief is not the opposite of joy. It is the soil from which joy can grow if we let it. I stood in the doorway of the living room, looking at the house filled with light, laughter, and life. I whispered to the empty air, "We made it, my love. We survived the lies, the betrayal, and the darkness. I am still here. I am alive, and I will live fully as you would have wanted." For the first time in months, I smiled without guilt or fear. My husband was gone, yes, but I was no longer lost. I had faced betrayal, exacted justice, and reclaimed my life. And in that reclamation, I had found the most precious thing of all, myself.